Hello, welcome to my very first 1 hour long video. It has taken quite a bit of my time to put together, so this will probably be the only video I release this month. All of the stories have been taken from the subreddit Paranormal. As far as I know, they're all true. Story 1. The reason I know ghosts are real. So a few years ago, my neighbour asked me if I could go watch her dog while she and her family went away for the weekend. I said sure, since I live right across the street and just had to walk over and check on her from time to time. Well, 3 days in, and I decided that the dog seemed really lonely, and I had nothing better to do. So I stayed over one night just to watch TV and hang out with her. Well, an hour or two into watching TV with this massive pit bull in my lap, she raised her head up and looked at the stairs. I thought nothing of it, but a few moments later, she did it again, but this time got off me and walked over to the stairs, and it was like she was looking at something. I kept trying to call her back to me because she was freaking me out, but she didn't listen. And then she started barking, which is really unusual for her. I got up and told her to stop, but again she wouldn't listen, and all of a sudden she yelps in pain like something hit her, and runs toward the back door, and bust through the old screen door. I had the main door open, because it's the middle of July, and their AC sucked. It took me 20 minutes to get her back in the house, after which I deadbolt the back door, checked to make sure the basement door was locked. I specifically remember locking the basement door because they made such a big deal about not wanting her down there, because she can get hurt because of all the junk, and deadbolt the front door with a key, and went home and freaked the hell out. The next morning I went over to check on her and let her out to pee, and she was nowhere to be found. I checked everywhere and started freaking out. Finally, after searching upstairs, I went to go check the back door. Then, from behind me, I hear scratching in the basement door. My heart fell into my stomach because the first thing that came to my mind was that I didn't lock the door. But then I was like, I know I did. And I thought that it might not be her, but some demon coming to kill me. I go up to the door, and I call her name. She starts to whimper, so I go to open the door, and it's locked. I unlock it, let her out, make sure she has food and water, let her out to pee, and locked up the house. I then called my neighbour, and told her what happened, and she said I wasn't going back in that house. She got someone else to watch her dog. Over the next few years, weird stuff like this happened pretty much any time I was over there. After the dog incident, I didn't go over there for a few weeks. Any time I looked at the house, I got a chill. Finally, she convinced me to come over and hang out with them. The kids were asleep, and it was about 2 a.m. We sat in front of the porch smoking, and she told me how this has been happening all her life. I was a little taken aback by this. She goes on to say that when she was like 5 or 6, these people used to babysit her, and they were like into witchcraft or voodoo or something. She can barely remember it, but what she does remember is going into this dark basement with like stone walls, and they would have her sit on the floor while they chant and throw liquids at her. She was really vague, and had no clue how to explain it because she would black out as soon as the ritual or whatever started. Then one day, she just never saw those people again. So soon after, she started to experience things around 8 years old. And the worst thing of all was the sleep paralysis. She tells me that almost every night she would wake up and couldn't move, but she could feel something pulling her into bed. She was sinking, but with hands on her arms and legs pulling her down. She couldn't scream or anything. Other than that, everything else that happened to her could be explained. Noises and figures out of the corner of her eyes. Nothing too crazy. This went on for years, and slowly stopped till she was in high school. When she was in high school, a lot of other bad things were happening to her, and I'm not going to get into that, but she said that things with this ghost or demon thing got bad as soon as her life got bad. One time, she was home alone, and something pulled her chair like 10 feet from the dining table where she was studying. Another time, she went to bed, and then woke up standing in the living room. I knew talking about this really bothered her, and tears started forming in her eyes, so I left it alone. Finally, she gained her composure and told me something that really made my hair stand up straight. After a lot of research and therapy, she came to the conclusion that these people used her as a portal to hell. And the events that transpired after this conversation made me believe every word she told me. About a week after talking to my neighbour about what was going on in her house, and about a month after the dog incident, she asked me if I could watch her kids overnight. I told her I didn't want to be in that house alone, and that I was really freaked out. She tries to tell me that it only really bothers her, and it would only be a few hours. I'm still not convinced, but I tell her I would because she would only be a 30-minute drive away. So around 10 p.m. I go to her house. She tells me I'll be fine and heads out with her husband. The kids are already in bed upstairs, so I sit on the couch and watch TV. Around 11:30 p.m., the electricity goes out, so I'm sitting in the dark, trying to convince myself that it's just the old house and faulty wiring. I try to feel around for my phone, but I can't find it. I stand up and start moving pillows around. Still can't find it, so I sit down and silently pray for the lights to come back on. My left side starts to get cold and my mind starts to race. I think about how this thing is going to kill me. I try to tell myself I'm fine and nothing bad is going to happen to me. Then, I feel the couch move down next to me, like someone is sitting down. Just a very slow pressure. My heart starts racing and all I can think of is that if this isn't the dog, I'm out. I reach over and there's nothing on the couch next to me. My body gets really cold and I feel tears rolling down my face. I was too scared to move, so I just sat there with this thing sitting next to me. Finally, the lights come back on, and I let out a huge sigh. I had been holding my breath. This whole thing happened in the span of like 5 minutes. I looked next to me and saw nothing, and I didn't feel the cold anymore. So, I started to look for my phone. I had just been scrolling through Facebook not that long ago, so I was really confused. Finally, I found it under the couch and have no clue how it got there. Literally had it on the couch next to me not even 10 minutes ago. Now I'm just sitting there contemplating what to do. If I should call my neighbour to come back early, or just wait it out. So I finally just decide to text my neighbour and tell her what is going on and if she will be back soon. 10 minutes later, she tells me that she won't be back till 1 a.m. and begs me to stick it out. I agree and try to distract myself with YouTube videos. Around 12:30, I was calm and forgot about the whole thing. I get a text from her saying she's going to be on her way back in like 5 minutes, so I'm happy at this point. I start to gather my laptop and clean up any mess I made. I decided to walk upstairs and check on the kids. I walk around the corner and peek in. The door was wide open. I see the oldest on the top bunk fast asleep, and a mountain of blankets on the bottom bunk where the youngest should be. I couldn't see her, and that made me nervous, so I walked closer to try and see her face or something so I knew for sure she was there. I still can't see her, and my heart starts to race. I start moving blankets frantically. She's gone. I look around the room and under the bed. I search their parents' room and the bathroom. At this point, I'm freaking out so bad that I start crying. I run downstairs and search everywhere, even the basement. Then I notice the back porch light is on, and the door is open. I start to panic and run outside, and there she is. She's crouched in the middle of the yard, her blue tank top and pink shorts covered in mud, and it looks like she's scraping at the ground. I run over to her and pick her up to bring her inside. Her skin is ice cold, even though it's August and like 80 degrees at night. She starts freaking out, starts kicking and punching me. She was pretty strong for a 6-year-old, but I managed to bring her inside and try to calm her down. I ask her how and why she was outside, and that's when I realize her eyes are closed and she's still asleep. I'm so confused and upset at this point, so I just pick her up and sit on the couch with her still in my arms, afraid that if I let her go, she's going to disappear again. A few minutes later, my neighbour and her husband walk through the door. She sees me sitting there with her youngest, and it's like she's not surprised, just a sad look. Her husband runs up the stairs to check on the oldest, and she just stares at me for a minute. I tell her this is affecting her kids and she needs to do something. She tells me she knows, and that she is trying her best. She takes the youngest from me and tells me thank you, and then I can go home, and she walks upstairs. I quickly leave and walk across the street. I didn't sleep at all that night. Story 2. I did a house cleaning for a young family a few years ago. She and I had spoken a bit on Facebook. I was already cleaning for a friend of hers. She knew that I also did paranormal investigations and clearings, so she mentioned that her daughters had been seeing a dark shadow in their downstairs bedroom, and she had seen a man on a horse in her living room. I was really excited to check out her place, hoping that maybe she'd let me do an investigation and clearing at some point in the future. Sure enough, while cleaning the ensuite bathroom in her daughter's basement bedroom, I did feel a presence in there. Male. Very negative. I could feel that he wanted me to get the hell out. I was uncomfortable, but not scared. The rest of the house felt totally normal. I cleaned the main floor, and then went up to the top floor to do the other bedrooms. I was up in the master bathroom when I heard a bunch of people talking downstairs. They were quite loud, sounded like they were in the entrance by the front door, which the stairs were open to. I thought it was my client's relatives. My client had gone camping with her daughters for the weekend and had left me the key to the house. She had hidden it in a stroller that was parked in the front yard. Kind of stupid place to hide it, since it was the type of stroller that someone might want to steal. I figured that maybe her family had stopped by to check things out since she was out of town, though they were only gone for the weekend. I heard one of them tell the others, "That's the woman who's cleaning for her. She's upstairs in the master bathroom. Sarah left her the key. She hid it in the stroller." It sounded to me like they thought it was a dumb idea as well, judging by her tone of voice. It sounded like there were 2 women and 2 men. I was thinking grandma, grandpa, mum and dad. They all sounded middle-aged to possibly elderly. I felt uncomfortable being up there cleaning while they were down there talking about me. So I took off my gloves and decided to go down and introduce myself. There was nobody there. And not only was there nobody there, but the door was still locked and the floor was still clean. This was the middle of winter in Calgary. Tons of snow, mud, gravel, salt. If 4 or more people had come into the house and stood there talking, there should have been a puddle on the floor. I had left my boots out on the front step and had already cleaned the main floor. Then I looked at the little bit in the shelf by the front door. I had left the house keys there when I came in. Now, they were gone. I know that not only did I put them there right when I came in the door, but that I had seen them when I cleaned the entranceway. Whoever had been talking down there had taken the keys, but there was nobody there, and I also hadn't heard anyone come in or out. I just kind of heard them there, talking, and then they were gone. I ended up spending nearly 2 hours looking for those keys. A 4-hour job turned into nearly a 6-hour job. I ended up finding them in the bottom of a basket that was on the kitchen counter. This basket was full of bread and buns on the top, and empty plastic bags and junk in the bottom. I know that it was the same set of keys because they had a plastic flip-flop keychain that was chewed on one end by her baby. I know that there was no way I put those keys not only into that basket, but underneath a pile of plastic bags, school flyers, junk mail, etc. I know for certain that I had purposefully set them on that little shelf by the front door. I was worried about misplacing them because I knew she wanted me to put the keys back into the stroller when I left so that she could get back into the house. I think that those people or spirits hid the keys there because they were not comfortable with the keys being left in the stroller. I guess that they didn't care about Sarah and the kids getting back into the house. So many times during that 2 hours, I almost texted her to tell her what was going on, but I didn't want to stress her out. I was worried enough wondering how I was going to lock the front door with no keys. Oh man, the relief I felt when I found those keys. I had checked everywhere, even back outside in the stroller. I had gone through cutlery drawers, the scary bathroom downstairs. I thought that maybe the basement dweller ghost had taken them. I was never scared at all. I was frustrated that the keys had been taken, and I was totally blown away that I heard those spirits talking about me. And yes, when Sarah got back, I did tell her what had happened. No one else had the keys to the house except for her husband, who was in the oil fields up north. Her parents or grandparents would never drop by like that, and she had never experienced voices, nor had she had anything moved before. She did have an investigation and clearing at her house, but not by me. Our mutual friend started dating a medium, and they allowed her to do it instead. I was really sad about that. Story 3. I was wondering if you guys could help with something I witnessed on Dartmoor a few years ago. A bit of background. Dartmoor is a national park in southwest England. It's sparsely populated, and the vegetation is mainly grass, bracken, and gorse, with sporadic trees and woodland in valleys. It's hilly, and there's lots of granite outcrops and the top of many hills called tors. Anyway, enough of the geography lesson. So this happened about 10 years ago, and me, my brother, and my dad all witnessed it. We live in the south of Dartmoor, and one day our plan was to walk north over the moors to a place called Princetown, where there is a nice pub. It's about a 4 to 5 hour hike from our house. My mum would then collect us from the pub. Happy days. It's a walk we've done many times before, and the route takes us close to this old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, accessible by a really rough track. I've never really liked it, but also had no reason to avoid it. According to word of mouth, an old lady lives there alone. On this day, we crested the hill from which you can first see the house and sit down. It's a lovely day, and we look down on the farmhouse and it's all very scenic. The house at this point is probably about a quarter of a mile away, so this is where the weird bit happens. Suddenly, about 10 to 15 white figures emerge from the front of the house and start moving in a random pattern around the field in front. This field is just moorland but surrounded by a stone wall. The weird thing was their movement. It was almost like they were on dirt bikes. They moved really quickly and smoothly, way faster than a person could move and without a perceivable up and down movement. But they were standing up, and we were upwind and didn't hear anything. The figures also seemed to be unnaturally tall in relation to the house. Then they all got into single file and cruised off behind the house. We didn't see them again after that. We took a longer route around the house as none of us really wanted to get that close, and noped to the pub. When I got home, I asked a few people about it, and my dad has got quite a few good connections around Dartmoor, and we heard a lot of hearsay about druids. That would explain the white, I guess. But I didn't know druids had a habit of zooming around fields. Story 4. I've posted about this before, a couple of years ago, and I'm frustrated enough to vent about it again now. It's just so annoying. I live in a 300-year-old cottage in the UK with my mum, who is fairly unwell. I pay the rent, groceries, etc., and the lease is in my name. But this is my child at home. I've lived here since the day I was born. We have a few things going on here, though nothing too intense. Wax spots appearing in random places, as if someone has been carrying a lit candle about, in places we would never have candles, such as our wooden staircase, which is as old as the house. And sometimes we'll see a black cat walk into the room, when we don't own one. My mum has seen an elderly lady in an apron around the garden, but I don't know if that's real, or her just seeing things due to exhaustion. Recently, I was alone in the house, and witnessed the cast iron stove door close on its own. You have to lift it onto the catch to close it, and it's pretty damn hefty, so no, it was not the wind. None of that bothers me. What does bother me is that this house keeps hiding my shit, and apparently it does not like it when I call it out on that. It's been happening my whole life, so I can't really pinpoint a first instance. As a little kid, I used to get in trouble for losing my stuff because my parents, understandably, didn't believe me when I swore I left it in a certain spot, and it was gone when I came back. I have no siblings, so I was the only suspect, except when I had a friend over, and occasionally they would get accused. I suppose one of the earliest instances I remember is when my friend had been visiting, and we'd been listening to the boy band 911 on cassette. Boy, I feel old. My friend left, and when I came back to my room, my tape was there, but the sleeve notes were gone. We all thought my friend stole them because she was jealous. But no, a few hours later, there they were, shoved down the back of a radiator in my room. My parents still thought she'd done that out of jealousy, and maybe she did, but I'm not sure anymore. I'll skip to the more recent incidences, seeing as I've lost count of the times in between. I had the fancy gold Zelda Skyward Sword Wiimote when the game first came out. It was kept on the little table next to the TV where it belonged, for weeks and weeks, and then it was gone. I was 21 at the time, and my mum and I actually ended up in a blazing row about it. I was convinced she must have tidied it by accident. She was convinced I must have misplaced it and was being a bitch by accusing her. We turned the house upside down looking for the damn thing, and eventually decided to let it go. 4 years passed without it ever surfacing. Then it shows up, on an otherwise empty, unused shelf, far too high for us to use, in my mum's old studio. We were only up there because we were getting a new rescue cat, and wanted to make her nice, safe high spaces to hide if she was nervous. We would never have been up there otherwise. We got a new dog last April, and she developed an attachment to a soft toy, and would sleep with it every night on the sofa. In September, it vanished. Same old story. We hunted absolutely everywhere. We never found it. And then, in December, it showed up inside a sealed box of Christmas decorations, one we had not opened since January. Other stuff has vanished. Hats, gloves, library books have had to pay the loss fee on, games, bags, lighters. Most recently, I brought a new book. Just a paperback. Nothing special. Yesterday I put it on my bed at 1 p.m, on top of the duvet, and went about my day, looking forward to coming back and reading it. Came to bed at 9 p.m. No book. Okay, maybe Mum moved it for some reason. No. I turned the house upside down. I looked in every place that book could possibly be, and all the places it would make no sense for it to be as well. Under the bed, on every shelf, in every cupboard, under cupboards, under sofas, down the sides of cushions and in work bags, and it is bloody nowhere. Not even in the car. It has ceased to exist. So, this one time, because I had a shitty day and I was feeling miserable anyway, I lost my patience with the house. While I was headed back upstairs, I said sternly to the air, "Stop this. Give me my book back. I want to read for a while." Instantly, the moment I finished speaking, I got a massive splinter in my finger from the stair rail. This being the first splinter I've had off the rail in the full 29 years I've lived there. So, I can't see that there's any real solution to this. It is what it is. I love my house, even when it misbehaves. I plan to raise my family there. It's just a little damn frustrating to lose things you paid for or created. Thought I'd vent a bit to people who won't instantly call me crazy. Story 5. I'm back on Reddit to tell a story that happened to me and my friend a year back. It was January 1917. I was at a sleepover with my friend. Let's call him Jerry. Jerry and I were having a sleepover at his house and genuinely having a good time, especially since I was going through a very rough time at home. Anyways, it all started when we were at the dining table eating some snacks. I'd say it was 10 p.m. when, out of nowhere, we heard this little girl's voice coming from the vents in the bathroom. Me and Jerry couldn't decipher one word she was saying, however. It didn't sound like any language that was spoken in my state. Keep in mind, this took place in Arizona, where people speak English and a lot of Spanish. Either way, I knew it wasn't Spanish, but also not English. Her accent sounded American, but still. Getting creeped out, my friend advised me to sit on the other side of the table so nothing could sneak up behind me. I did as he said, but the voice kept going. A minute later, the voice stopped and everything was at peace again. However, me and my friend saw a white orb come near us, which freaked us out of our minds. At this point, our breathing got more and more shallow, and our hearts started beating faster and faster. We got out of the kitchen, down the hallway to the office room. When there, we talked about it, and everything settled. For the time being. Later that night, around 12, we went down the same hallway to eat again. This time we were standing at the kitchen island table and walking around the kitchen. Meanwhile, nothing really happened. Then, it got really scary after we finished eating. Once we finished eating, we started skipping to the room next to the kitchen, which is this small rectangular room that has a front door, and it's basically a mini living room that my friend claims is his room. He sleeps on the couch, by the way. The moment we almost got into the room was the moment we both saw a shadowy figure down the hallway that looked like a little girl, and made us jump and call out. Hearts pounding, and the fear settling in again. We investigated the hallway, but didn't find anything. We went into the mini living room and started talking even more about it, and realized the voice earlier may have had something to do with the figure, especially since the figure literally looked like a little girl. Shaken up, we try not to look into the kitchen area and carry on with the night. At this point, we go back into the office, which would mean we would have to go down that hallway. We started making our way a quarter there, when, out of nowhere, my friend started punching the area in front of him, as if there was something there. Making me jump, I asked, "What the hell was that?" He replied, "Dude, I saw the girl again." Now that could have easily have been dismissed as him messing with me, but he's not the kind of person to joke with things like this. We continue down the hallway and enter the office room again. We stay there till 3 or 4 a.m. and decide to call it a night. We go down the dark hallway to the mini living room, trying our best to prepare ourselves for whatever may happen. Luckily, nothing happened, till we actually tried sleeping. I closed my eyes and tried not to look in the direction of the kitchen area, but something in me kept me from doing so. It was like this for another couple of minutes when we started hearing rustling noises from down the hallway. I lift my head up, and I don't see anything. My friend, being across the room, lifts the blanket off his face and we give each other that WTF look. Needless to say, we didn't sleep that night at all, and stayed up playing Uno instead. When his parents woke up that morning, we told them everything that happened, but they just dismissed it and told us it was nothing to worry about. In the end, I have no idea what's up with that old house, but it was a freaky experience regardless, and we felt like we were literally going to lose our lives that night to whatever thing that may have been. Sounds ridiculous, I know, but that's what it felt like. Story 6. I've had a good share of paranormal experiences in my lifetime. I know you haven't heard that one before. But in all seriousness, I want to talk about the strangest encounter and just see what other people say or think. A lot of people I tell about this just sort of write it off or think I'm joking, which is weird because of where it takes place. So, the beginning. 3 years ago. I just moved to Arizona from New Mexico. I have never gone to a public school, since I don't like big crowds and was raised in a very religious household. I moved from one private Christian school to the next all my life, so when I showed up to a ghetto, falling apart church building for my year, I didn't think twice. Things started out normally, until I noticed the locked doors. This is a relatively small church building, with about 30 kids enrolled from kindergarten to 12th. I am a creative person, so my mind had already created hundreds of scenarios for what was behind them. Every single idea I had was wrong. The first semester was about to end, and I still hadn't gotten behind any of the doors. It has been a while, but I think there were 7 locked doors in total, all located in different rooms, i.e., 2 were in the auditorium, 1 was in the music room, 1 in the pantry, the others placed randomly. I'd had enough. I was getting behind at least one of those doors. My teacher usually left her keys in the classroom when it was lunchtime, so I stayed back that day and grabbed them off her desk when I was the last one in the room. I grabbed my 2 best friends, let's call them Beth and Manny, and tell them to meet me in the auditorium soon. We all sneak out of the lunchroom and make our way there, standing in front of a locked door. I will never forget going through key by key, trying to find the one that fit. Till one did, and the door creaked open, revealing an old staircase leading into darkness. So, we get our phones out and turn on our flashlights and begin the descent down the stairs. The walls were old brick and the floor was carpet, mixed with a lot of dirt. It looked as though no one had been down here for a few years. Boxes with costumes for plays labelled everywhere from 2002 to 2007, so we were all somewhat bummed. We wanted to find something weird, not just Christmas play scripts and costumes. The hallways had a 3-way turn, so we all split up. Beth found a room full of white sheets and mirrors. Creepy, I know, especially later this room comes into play. Manny found a bigger room that was under the stage with an old baptism pool, so pretty much a broken hot tub and a lot of crosses. I came across a long hallway. It had to have stretched across the entire school or church. Doors here and there, with different rooms with weird things in each, like working washer-dryer, a room with hundreds of mops and one with old furniture. At the end of the hallway was another staircase going up with a door. I turn the lock and open it. It was the locked door in the pantry. Anyways, we all group up again, and apparently every one of the locked doors leads to this odd basement. We all leave, making sure a few doors are unlocked so we can get back down there if we ever felt like it. The next day comes around, and Manny had brought a Ouija board and tarot cards along with printed out pages on how to conjure spirits and open portals and whatnot. We all head down into the long hallway and mess around for 30 minutes or so. And again, nothing happens. The next day comes around, and the 3 of us think, what the hell, let's play hide and go seek down there. This is where things start to get weird. A game goes by, and Manny starts yelling about how we can't be so rough and pushing him wasn't cool. I know I didn't push him, and Beth denied doing it as well. Next game, someone put their hands in my hair, and it pissed me off since I'm not the touchy type. They both denied it. Then Beth asked to stop scaring her because we keep standing at the end of the hallway, and all she sees is the tall, shadowy figures, and it freaks her out. Since we weren't standing there, it freaked us out. So we all decided to leave, and Beth made us promise not to go back down there. The next day, Manny wants to go and try and communicate with whatever was down there. I thought, why not? Just don't let Beth know. We get to the hallway, and we are asking for signs and whatnot. So I decide to throw a rubber ball down the hallway. Remember, this is a long hallway. I hear it hit the other end and there was nothing. Then, something threw the ball back at us. We both freaked out and ran. Another day comes by, and I'm itching to see something. I decide to go back down into the basement. I've always had a fear of mirrors, so I decide that's the best place to be. I'm standing there alone, asking questions and talking, trying to catch the attention of whatever is down there. A while goes by, and then it happened. Looking into a mirror, I see a woman in this beautiful white dress walk across the hallway behind me. It was the most fear I have ever had. I quickly got out of there to run straight into my principal teacher. She told me to step into her office because we needed to talk. She asked me what I had seen, so I told her everything, leaving Beth and Manny out, so she knew about the ball and the woman and the hair touching. She sighs and tells me children have been hearing someone singing about bleeding eyes when they walk past the doors. A Spanish teacher was late there one evening, and the locked doors apparently began to open and shut repeatedly, scaring the living hell out of her. Then I asked her why the doors were locked, and she went into full backstory mode. When her daughter was younger, like 26 now but 7 then, she went into the music room and one of the locked doors opened itself, and her daughter saw a woman in white and fire all around her. So the little girl started screaming, "We're all going to burn! All of us are going to burn!" Her mum came running in to find nothing, and her daughter spazzing out on the floor. They called the police to search for homeless people. You wouldn't believe how many times that's happened. My favourite was when a girl went to the restroom and they came back out saying there was a naked woman in there. There were 3 naked homeless ladies chilling in there, and it still cracks me up. Anyways, they found nothing. So they had the pastor come in and bless everything. Same thing happened after we talked. She called the pastor and police to do a search and bless the place. It all died down after they came in, and we didn't talk much about it. But I asked alumni if they ever saw anything or heard stories. Some talked about red eyes in the attic, the lady in the basement, and that some cult sacrificed animals around the area. Supposedly, they used to do exorcisms in the basement, but it's all rumours. I know what I saw, and I'm convinced it was evil. The next year, I would sneak down there and take naps because I would have these vivid dreams of being stuck in this old white house with a woman. It was terrifying, yet peaceful. Anyways, more stuff happened here, and there were like doors opening and things disappearing or breaking, but everyone just wrote it off. I know something is still down there, but now it's all in the past. Story 7. To preface, I've never been a hugely spiritual person. Not that I ever look down on it, I just really describe myself as open-minded either way, kind of ghost agnostic. But recently, I've moved into a new house with just my mother after my parents got a divorce. She stays at her new boyfriend's a lot of the time. She's always been kind-hearted and has always been a good parent to me. But recently, I find myself sometimes being lonely, with a lot of nights just being me in my room at 3 a.m. watching YouTube on my laptop and no one else being in the home. To describe the house, it's beautiful. The garden is ridiculous, filled with roses and lemon trees, berry bushes and apricots and every plant you can think of. It's only a modest 1-story, so it's a garden that shows a story of time spent and not money. The previous tenant must have had a lot of time on their hands. It's a beautiful cottage. The rent was very cheap for the area and the size. I think most people would think it's outdated with its rose-patterned frosted glass screens and 80s floral curtains. But as soon as I walked in, I felt an incredible energy. It felt like I was revisiting some kind of childhood home, like I'd almost been here before, I guess. Here's where things really get weird. It's not a rough area. It's not a huge mansion that needs protecting. I think it's a beautiful place, but it's still a 2-bedroom cottage. But it has security cameras in every room in the house. It has a massive security system installed. It's a paid service per month and it's been installed, but we don't pay for it to work. With even an intercom installed that connects to every room. And every single window in the house has a bulletproof security shutter on the outside window that rolls down, like the ones they use out the front of shops when it's closing time. Every door has like 3 deadlocks, and I can't figure out how I would ever break into this place if I needed to. Even if you were prepared to smash glass, you couldn't get in. You'd need a battering ram. So whoever lived here before must have been quite scared of the outside world. This place is like a fortress when it comes to security. As soon as we moved in, I knew there was something else here. Again, I'm not a hugely spiritual person, but she had such a strong presence and she wasn't afraid to let me know. I'll get on to how I know it's a woman later. As soon as we moved in, we noticed teaspoons went missing. We've been buying new packs every month. The reason I think it was her is that every once in a while, when it's late, I'm the only one at home, and my dogs are inside my room. Clear as day, I can hear someone in the kitchen opening the fridge, making teas, the kettle being turned on, then walking out of the kitchen, sitting in the lounge, drinking their tea, and then the noise stopping. When I say I can hear this, I don't mean I can hear small creaks or the occasional tap. I mean I can hear the footsteps, clear as day, going in and out of the kitchen, the kettle being turned on. It's as loud as any person doing it, and as constant. As I said before, this house is a fortress. The doors are locked, and there's no way someone's gotten in. And any time I've checked the kitchen, I usually can't see anything, but I can feel her. Here's the important part. She doesn't scare me. She doesn't cause fear. In fact, I feel such a warm vibe from her, I haven't minded her being here at all. In fact, I actually kind of felt like I should thank her for the garden. I hadn't properly spoken to anyone about it, for fear that no one would believe me, I guess. Last night, for the first time, I was telling my friend, we'll call them Eddie, about the experience, including a couple of things I haven't mentioned yet, such as when walking through a hallway quickly, if the doors are open, you can catch a glimpse of her in a room, tying her shoes, sitting on the bed, just living life. If you ever walk backwards and try to properly look, she won't be there. For the record, I feel like I probably don't even need to state it in this subreddit, but I have no history of schizophrenia in the family. I've never had hallucinations, auditory or visual, and this is the only time I 100% truly feel like I was in the presence of an otherworldly entity. As we continued to talk about her more, the entire vibe of the room began to change. Slowly, so we didn't even notice it. I was speaking only positively about her. I thought she seemed nice. She had a good energy. I didn't even mind her being here. And I hoped she didn't mind me being here either. She seems shy. She prefers dimly lit rooms, mostly in the kitchen and lounge. We were in the lounge talking about this. But she also had such a strong presence. She wasn't afraid to let herself known, and it's like at the same time, Eddie's body became covered in goosebumps. They don't get goosebumps easily at all. In fact, they even said, I literally think the last time I had goosebumps was as a kid. They even get goosebumps on their jaw. Every single hair was standing to attention. We laughed it off like a couple of kids, but secretly, I could also feel my ears going numb and tingling, like I was standing in the snow, even though I live in Australia and it's the middle of summer right now. Looking back, I think this was the point she heard us talking about her and sat down to listen. I continued to talk about her, sitting in my lounge with a small lamp dimly lighting the room. I kept feeling something stroking my forefinger. It was up in the air, towards the armchair. I'd stop speaking for a second, give it a rub, and then a minute later, I'd feel it again. She really wasn't being shy. It was like she was trying to tell me something. Looking back, she did it every time I mentioned that I thought she was happy. After a long wait, my friend Eddie said, I kind of feel like she might be depressed. It was at that moment that my entire body got a feeling of this extreme dread, like that existential dread you get when you realize the true nature of death. Her face flashed in front of my eyes. I went from being perfectly happy. In fact, I was actually having quite a good time, both of us feeling and recognizing her spirit in the room. I went from feeling that to one of the worst feelings I've ever felt in my whole life. I've had diagnosed clinical depression before, and this feeling made me feel like that was baby stuff, and it was physical as well. My whole body tingled, like the entirety of me got pins and needles. Not hugely unpleasant or pleasant, but so real. And to feel that emotion so suddenly freaked me out so badly. I told Eddie I needed to get out of that room immediately, so we left and went into the backyard. We sat on the step outside the back door, and I told them what had happened. My friend suggested that she might have been trying to show me exactly how she felt. She just wanted me to understand. And we both told each other how we saw a glimpse of her face in our minds the moment that feeling overtook me. We described her feature by feature, and I genuinely believe we both saw the same face. I know how psychologically these things work, but that's why I tried to do it so we would both say one feature at a time. We both came to an exact consensus of what she looked like. She had dyed brown hair. She was older, but not that old. Maybe 55? The most standout feature were her eyes. She had absolute Betty Davis eyes. She looked like a sad puppy dog. They were blue and grey, and the emotion they showed was heartbreaking. She had a strong jawline, thinner lips, and really bad worry lines. Her nose had a strong bridge and was narrow from the front. She wore no makeup, and her hair was done in a vintage-style back roll. She was extremely pale. I composed myself, and we re-entered the house. And when we went back in the lounge, I had an odd feeling to knock on the door. And then we sat down. As soon as I entered, I obviously did a bit of reading this morning on things like frequencies and vibrations, but at the time, I had no idea about them. I could physically feel the vibe in the air. There was a faint ringing in my ears, and it's like the room was filled with tiny invisible feathers. Before I even mentioned this to my friend, he leaned towards me saying, "Holy shit, can you feel that?" I said I could. We both sat in silence on the couch, not fearful, but not sure what to do from here. After about a minute, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I remember I spoke carefully, clearly, and deliberately. I remember saying things like, "I'm sorry you had to ever feel that way. I don't think anyone deserves to ever feel that way. I feel like you have a kind heart, and I hope from here on out you can be happier than you are now." There was a bit of padding in the middle, but it's like when I spoke those last words, the frequency in the room went up so high. Eddie whispered next to me, "Did you just feel the room change?" Both our ears started ringing. My ears physically went red. Like when you're out in the snow and it's so cold your ears go hot. And the ringing in my ears was so fast, and it's almost like it had gotten brighter in there. We just sat there, in silence, feeling one of the weirdest sensations either of us had ever felt. After a couple of minutes, it died down, and we kept watching videos. We both needed to kind of unwind, and in about half an hour, we went to bed. But before we did, I had to let my dogs out. So I closed the fly screen and watched them run around outside. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I remember seeing a couple of white butterflies flying around the fly screen. Not moths or gnats, but white butterflies. It was 3 a.m. I didn't think anything about it until this morning when I was like, "Hey, actually, that was kind of weird." I looked up spiritual meanings this morning, and it said something about angels and change, but also had a couple of negative connotations. The biggest thing I wanted to ask is if anyone thinks I'm in danger from having such a close encounter. Do you think she's still here? Things I should take as warning signs in the coming couple of days? I personally have only felt warm energy from her, but the way she made me feel, that dread over my body scares me. I'm hoping she did it just to show me how she really felt, and she just wanted to be heard and understood. Story 8. So this happened a few years back. I'll start out by giving a brief description of our upstairs layout. So there's my room, which connects to another room where my younger brother and my baby sister sleeps. At the time this happened, my brother was about 7, and my baby sister was just a few months old. Also, when this story took place, my mother was sleeping in their room. Basically, you can't go into their room without entering through my room first. Anyway, so it's the middle of the night, and we're all asleep. And the story isn't going to be in my perspective, because I was also asleep. Instead, it's going to be from my brother's perspective. My brother's bed was directly towards the doorway, and at the far end of the doorway was a computer against a wall. So, what I'm saying is the kid had the little lights from the internet router and the CPU blinking towards him. So it kinda illuminates the room a little, just so you could faintly make out the objects and stuff. So he wakes up sometime in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. He stays in bed like that because he's a bit groggy, and until his eyes adjust to the darkness. So he turns his head towards the doorway, and then he instantly knows there's something different. Where the lights would be mercilessly blinking at him, stood a figure, blocking it. At first, he thought it was a pile of clothes I had thrown onto the desk chair. Then, he thought it was probably me, getting ready to start up my computer or something. My bed was on the left side of the doorway, blocked by the partition, so there's no way he could have known if I was in my bed or not. Except, the silhouette, while it was apparently sitting, was 5 feet tall, with a mop of hair and curls. My hair isn't curly and all over the place, and I'm only 4 feet and 9 inches standing up. He initially tried to brush it off, thinking it was the pile of clothes, but he was starting to get scared. He wanted to pee badly, and he was too afraid to call for my mum or me, and we were within earshot of each other. Then, when he was ready to convince himself it was nothing, he said that it turned its head sideways. He could distinctively make out a nose. He forgot about wanting to go to the bathroom, and immediately pulled the sheets over his head and tried his best to go to sleep. My brother could sleep through a hurricane, so yeah, he eventually fell asleep. When he woke the next day, he told us everything. But me and my parents just brushed it off because, well, he's just a kid, right? Kids have imaginations, and it's probably nothing. Several years later, and well, he's 15 now, and just the other day I jokingly brought it up and he got kinda mad. He said he wasn't making anything up, and that he was 110% sure it happened, and he wasn't imagining it. He described it to me in detail, the same way he described it to me when he was younger. How the night went. He swears he saw it, and that he was scared. At this point, even my parents got kind of freaked out. He's not a kid anymore. Why would he make anything up? We could just brush it off and believe it's a hallucination that was too vivid that he engraved it into his mind as a memory. But this house, which is 100 years old, has a past. You see, it was a small woodland once, and my father himself has had experiences. I too, having never believed any of them, and being too doubtful of stories about shadow figures, saw a black figure crossing a doorway, and I was the only one in the area at that moment. That's another story anyway. But to think something was just right next to me, sitting in front of my computer while I slept, scaring the shit out of my brother, is just spooky. Story 9. This is my first time posting on this forum as a long-time lurker. I don't think I've ever told anyone about this experience, but here we go. Do forgive me if I'm not a good writer or explainer. I'll do my best. Back in high school, I was anorexic and very depressed. One night I was heading to bed when I heard what was like very faint radio voices. Like people talking on the radio, but not in any language I knew. I get up and check my room to see if I left my computer on. Everything's turned off, and the voices are still coming from somewhere. Then I wander to my sister's room to check to see if she has something on. Then my father's room, the bathroom, then the kitchen, then the living room. I can't tell you how freaked out and confused I was when I finally checked the last room in the house, which was the living room, for any gadgets that might be emitting sounds. And I turned the corner of the hall to see the living room is pitch black with nothing left on. I stand there for a moment looking into the non-reassuring darkness, so confused. I felt the darkness of no images on the TV was terrifying. Where were those voices coming from? Surely some sort of appliance that is picking up radio waves of some sort. The voices are still audible after I check the whole house for any technology that might be on. I looked everywhere to find the source, but it wasn't like they got louder anywhere for me to find it. They were the same volume wherever I walked in the house as I listened to try to find where they were coming from. The thing is, they weren't talking to me. They aren't speaking in English telling me to do things. They were talking to each other, in some incomprehensible language, having a kind of low tone of voice conversation. Then their tune changes, even though I can't understand what they are saying. I can feel like I can tell by their change in rushed voices that they just noticed that I noticed them. I don't know. It was just the most eerie and freaky thing to kind of innately understand just from someone's change in tone of voice. I could tell that they just noticed that I noticed them. Like if you overhear people speaking French or Spanish, and they change their tune to quieter and more hushed, like they all of a sudden noticed someone was listening and didn't want to be overheard. That was just the innate understanding I had. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I went back to my room and went to sleep thinking I was having a psychotic episode and that it was all in my head. A month or so later, I all of a sudden hear the voices talking to each other again. This time I was walking down a street from my high school, skipping class, walking to go to a coffee shop. I keep walking and just try to reassure myself that it's all in my head. But it's just so real, like the fillings in my mouth are picking up radio waves. Again, they're not talking to me, or are they speaking in any language I understand, just to each other. Even if I can't understand the language, I can understand their intonations. Like sometimes one would chuckle or if one hushes the other. It was a conversation. Almost like they were talking about me, that I could hear them, that they thought it was funny that I was going insane by it. I can understand mocking in any language. I get to the complex where the coffee shop is, and I feel like I'm going insane. What the hell? I definitely hear voices. I must be going crazy. I even walk up to an A&W drive-through box because the voices have to be coming from some logical source, like a drive-through window. But that doesn't make sense, as I heard them again for the second time walking down a busy road from school way before I reached the complex. I stand there for a moment, beside cars, ordering at the drive-through window, to see if the voices coming from there are louder if I approach. But no, they are the same no matter how hard I try to search for the source. Eventually I walk back to school to go to class again, to hopefully get my mind off it. I've only ever had those 2 instances. Thank God I've never had this other than those 2 times. I don't know. It could be 2 minor instances of psychosis or schizophrenic phases brought on by my fragile mental state at the time, being a teenager with anxiety and depression that manifested itself through anorexia. Or it could be more sinister. If you believe in the paranormal, other interpretation could be that it was evil spirits around me that were talking about me and my struggles, that preyed on me and my weak mind at the time. I would love to hear your thoughts, or if anyone had similar experiences. I just pray I never hear those radio voices again, and I'm so thankful it was only the 2 times when I was 16. One thing I would like to note is that it sounded so real. I've had other unexplainable experiences that I'll post here later, where stuff moved physically, but this felt more real than that. I would say that this experience is much more substantial and more real to me than any other experience I've had. And I've seen inanimate objects move and I felt like things touched me. This was the most real and terrifying experience I've ever had. Thank you for listening to and/or watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and hit the like button. If you don't currently subscribe to my channel, please do so. It really helps the channel to grow. I do hope you enjoy this first 1-hour video. It has taken me quite a bit of time to put together. Don't forget, if you do want to support me further, you might want to consider purchasing the audiobook I narrated last year, Punch, by J.R. Park. It's available on Audible and iTunes. I'll put a link in the video description below. I have also created a dedicated PayPal account. Should you feel compelled to tip me for the work I'm doing, please feel free to do so. Once again, thank you so much for listening.